In general, hang gliders, paragliders and paramotor pilots use an emergency parachute, but there are quite a few myths circulating, and I think it would be a good time to start debunking them. Hi, welcome to Flight Coach. If you're new here, my name is Bas van Duin and it is my mission to help you get more out of life and your flying career through having less stress and more skills. This is the second episode in my series about emergency parachutes. If you've not seen the first part yet, I highly recommend that you do that first. I will leave a link right here. As with a lot of things in our beautiful air sports, there are a lot of opinions and some of these even got elevated to the level of myths. Things people keep telling each other, but which are actually just plain rubbish. Let's start with those. If you use a steerable reserve, you have to use quick outs. The reason why a lot of people use a quick out system is because of the added danger of the steerable reserve flying into your main canopy and those getting tangled, or what we call the mirroring effect, both of them starting to fly down and actually accelerating you towards the ground. You have to do something when you use this parachute, but it is not the only way to go to use the quick outs. The alternative is to disable your main wing, preferably by completely pulling it towards you. And if that's not possible, trying to stall it by using a beeline stall. A steerable parachute is only useful when you use it at high altitudes. Steerable parachutes have the fastest opening times, so you're suspended under them in the least amount of time compared to all the other types. But you of course have to take some time to retract your main glider, maybe keep it between your legs, to untangle it and to release the brakes to unlock the full potential of the steerable parachute. But this of course does not mean that you only have an advantage of the steerable parachute when you use it at high altitude. If you deploy it at such a low altitude that you will not be able to steer, it still has all the benefits that the square parachute has. You just did not unlock its full potential. A square reserve is always better than a round one. There are some situations in which this is not true. Say you were to deploy your emergency parachute in a highly populated area. You will be tracking sideways. You will be moving forward or sideways or backward with a certain speed. If you hit a building with that speed, it can be quite unpleasant. I would rather land vertically on the roof of a building with a normal round, or PDA as it's actually called, parachute. So no, it is not true that a square parachute is always better than a round one. I'm so glad to see you're still watching. As you may have noticed, it takes me a lot of time to make these videos for you every week, and I hope you're really enjoying them. What you can do to help me is, if you like this video, press that like button, maybe consider subscribing. Don't forget to press the bell icon so you get notified when I release my next episode. I'm really cool. I fly low all the time, so I never need a parachute. I just don't bring one. In the old days, parachutes took a long time, so a lot of altitude, to open. Nowadays, with modern materials and design philosophies, there are parachutes that are effective as low as 30 meters above the ground. Now, of course, there are situations in which it is actually a bad idea to bring an emergency parachute. We'll go into more detail on that a bit later. But it is not true that in general, if you fly low, that you do not have to bring an emergency parachute. That depends on how you define low. I think that there are very few people that only fly way below 30 meters in altitude. If you're cruising around at an altitude of 100 meters, it can be perfectly safe and beneficial for your health to bring an emergency parachute. Also consider that a parachute is already slowing your descent even when it is not fully inflated. So let's say your parachute has an opening altitude to become fully opened of 50 meters. That does not mean that if you're flying at 49 meters altitude, it is useless to throw your reserve. Removing the parachute from the harness should only be done by a specially trained person. It is important to know what you're doing when you're removing and installing your reserve. I'm talking about the reserve that is in the inner container with the handle on it and the bridle sticking out, but that is not yet attached to the harness. This is something that you, as an intermediate or even a beginner pilot with some training, can do yourself. There are plenty of explanations in the manuals and online on how to do it. Be sure to follow the exact same steps that are listed in the manual. But it is something you can do yourself. And it is important that you know how to do it yourself for when your handle comes undone, or for when you are, for instance, going dune soaring in low dunes. Then it's better to remove. I've never used my emergency parachute, and even though it's 15 years old, I've felt the fabric, it still feels safe, I can keep using it. Now this is a matter of a lot of debate, and I'm not going to repeat all the arguments here. But let's in general say that manufacturers, they give them a technical life. They say, for instance, this parachute should not be used after 10 years of age. Some even extend that to 12, 13 years. Maybe at the time you're watching this video, there are parachutes that can have a longer life even. Now, of course, the amount of times it has been used and whether or not it has been damaged and the amount of times it has been repacked does something to the quality of the material. At the same time, leaving it packed and not repacking it for years also degrades the material, and the experts are still debating which actually has the most significant impact on the lifespan. The most important thing to remember here is that there is a certain limit given by the manufacturer which should in no way be exceeded. Professional repackers will also know and respect these manufacturers' guidelines. So if you bring your parachute to a certain repacker and that person tells you, I am not allowed to repack this one anymore because of these rules, please don't go to someone else that is willing to repack it for you, because you're risking your life. And what do I mean by risking your life? Parachutes that exceed their viable date may behave differently. They may change into all kinds of small flakes when you deploy them, like completely exploding, or the effects may be less severe, like taking 3 times as long to fully inflate. All these things you don't want. Most parachutes last for 10 years. If you look at the expenses you make for a parachute, you use them for 10 years, it's only a few euros each month. I think your life is worth way more than that. At least I hope. What kind of emergency parachute are you using and why? I would love to hear your thoughts in the comments down below. Also, let me know what you think about this video. YouTube is recommending this video for you, and the video down below is one that I recommend you watch. See you next time. See you in the air.